Mombasa. And Mombasa using the this digital platform. So Gladys, do you take over for findings, or you want me to continue? Hello.
I can take over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you're going to get are the findings of this exercise. Let me go back again. This is the stakeholder meeting, the need assessment survey, and the focus group. So today, what we're trying to do is to on target. We slightly is going to strengthen the report. So Gladys, please. Yeah, hello.
Thank you, Michelle, for that. I hope I am audible. So what I am going to present now for the next hour, I hope I will not go beyond an hour.
Hope less than an hour.
Okay. Is the findings, and these findings are based upon the literature review that was done, and in consultation with ASEC, we also developed the data collection tools. And I know that most of you, we reached out to you in terms of calling you for the stakeholder meetings in the 4 regions that have been mentioned. And we also administered the survey questionnaire, which was the main tool of data collection from the ESOs themselves, and focus group discussions. And these targeted the startups that are being supported by the ESOs. So the reason we had these 3 data collection tools is so that we can actually enrich this report and not leave out a huge gap in case there is any. And the validation meetings are also very important, because then they will show us where we are currently if you actually validate them. That means if you say that actually this is what the circumstances look like, or this is what we go through, or this is what it is. And we are also saying that we don't end it there, that you also give us views, because we might have left out something during the report writing data analysis. So in case you feel like there is something that is missing, please feel free as we go along to stop me and tell me. So I will do this presentation in a systematic manner. I will present the findings of the stakeholder meetings that were held between April and May. And then I will present the findings of the survey that was done in June, and then and also the focus group discussion that was held in June as well. So for the, I have. So for the stakeholder meetings, we have said that we held 5 stakeholder meetings, 4 physically and 1 that was virtual. So most stakeholders came from Kisumu and Nakuru. So we had 12 stakeholders in these specific regions. So in the Western region, we held it at Kisumu at Lake Hub, and in Nakuru, which represents the Great Rift region, we held it at Nakuru Box. Then in Nairobi, we had 7 representatives, and we held these at Sandbox, while 2 people joined remotely. I have to say, however, that the virtual stakeholder meeting was attended by more than 2 people, but we had already met them physically. So the reason that we have 2 people is because they were the newest members who had not attended any of the stakeholders meetings prior. So who are the stakeholders that we met? This is a question that arose because I think we just assumed that we understand which stakeholders could have been invited. But the stakeholders that we got for this specific study were representatives from the ESOs themselves. So we had most of them being the founders or top senior management people in the ESOs. Then we had representation.
Hello, Gladys?
Yeah.
Allow me to interrupt you. It seems, there seems to be a problem with the top of the slide. It is dark and I've gotten a message. Can you see that?
It's because I am a co-host, so I have this banner here.
Okay, the banner is gone.
It's gone now. Okay.
It's gone now. But I think that it is, there are funny banners that are covering half of, and then the bottom. So the, there was one that was
I've moved it to the bottom, so it will still have that issue.
There's no way we can do away with it.
Not unless I'm no longer co-host, which means I can't present.
You can't present.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Mudhoni, are you there?
Yes, Michelle, I'm here.
Are you hearing this? Is it
okay,
possible?
I have known how to. We can't continue. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that, and sorry for those who couldn't see.
No problem.
Okay, thank you, Gladys.
Okay. So I've forgotten my line of thought. Okay, we had representation from the government. So for especially for Kisumu, we had the deputy director in the Ministry of ICT and Trade. In Nakuru, we had representation from the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. We had someone from the, I have forgotten, but it was a parastatal, and the county government under the Ministry of Trade. And in Nairobi, we had someone from the startup, the SME support. So the other group of stakeholders that we had were people from academia who are involved directly with the setup of this kind of startups and all that in their organizations, or people whom we had who have invested, or in universities that have invested in the innovation space. So we had the likes of Dedan Kimathi University, we had Egerton, we had the Technical University of Mombasa, and we had JKUAT represented in these stakeholder meetings. So I'm hoping.
Hey, Gladys, I think the floating, okay, is it back on my side, or I don't know if everyone can see it?
It keeps coming whenever someone wants to join the meeting. So I think we will have to make do with that.
Okay. Okay, can I help you share screen so that it does not come on your side, so that everyone can see the screen properly?
Sure.
Okay, just go ahead. Let me try and download the presentation. Okay.
So from these stakeholders that we met, we wanted to know whom, as I have said, the representation. So in terms of classification, so 20.76% of all these stakeholders we met said they worked for consultancy groups. I think from the meetings that we have had before, we have to actually reach out to these people and try to ask what exactly they do for the entrepreneurship ecosystem. Then 15.1% said they were accelerators, and 11.3% said they were from the national or county government. So these are people who actually represented government. And then the other classification fell under people who consider themselves makerspaces, corporate innovation centers, and not-for-profit organization. So you can see the spread across each region that we visited. So the key services that were offered by these stakeholders to their entrepreneurs or whomever they were supporting, the majority indicated that they offered business training. So these are business development people. So they offered trainings depending on what their target audience was. 9.17% indicated that they were offering networking opportunities, and 6.42 were in funding opportunities. So the other two that were a bit significant were the mentorship, those who offered mentorship, and 4.59% who represented the tech startups who offered digital skills training. So we can see the rest who are offering consultancy in business development, but we need to know what exactly that means. Investor readiness, is it coaching, co-working space, product design and development, incubation, and digital strategy development. So these are the demographics of the stakeholders that we met. So the stakeholder meetings were qualitative kind, it was qualitative in nature. So we had discussions around 5 main themes. So I will present that and what their recommendations were. So on the current assessment of the ecosystem, the most stakeholders agreed that the people who actually benefit from this ecosystem are young people. And this is because due to the main reason of unemployment that the country is grappling with, youth are trying to leverage the use of technology to establish successful business ventures or sustainable business ventures, and to make decent livelihoods from that in a dignified manner. So most stakeholders actually agreed that most people who are the beneficiaries of this ecosystem are young people. And they also brought up the point that Kenya is in the growth developmental stage of the startup sector. And therefore, they said that more support is required by ESOs to make the ecosystem competitive. So regionally, we see that we are making steps actually in the startup sector, but there is more actually that can be done to make us grow much more than we are currently. So ESO or the stakeholders actually said that they could do with more support, and more support here means from other stakeholders as well, so that they can make the ecosystem competitive. Most ventures, so we wanted to also hear, apart from these steps that are being made, what are the issues that are also facing the entrepreneurship ecosystem. So most stakeholders said that due to the fact that most ventures in this sector are technology dependent, they face especially technical challenges like digital skills. And the reason is because of the slow embrace and uptake of technology, and people also, people who are meant to use this technology, who are the end users, are shying. They do not want to actually take up this. So it actually is a challenge for people who are trying to venture into this space, because if your client or your customer does not want to or is hesitant to shop online or do anything online, and they want to come visit your store physically, then there is a challenge there. It means that we are still slowly embracing this, but because of this slow embrace, there is a challenge. And also technically for these startups, we were told, startups and even ESOs alike, we were told that you'll find that in most cases, this being an innovation space, you'll find that the founders in the early stages of setting up actually take up the roles of founder, they are the HR, they are the technical officer and all that. So due to the lack of delegation for whatever reason, it means that there is one space that's, there is of course something that will suffer. Maybe the HR part might suffer, or the finance part will suffer, or the technical part will suffer because of that lack of people who can take up these roles. And also to that point, because of trust as well, because most people are not ready to give their idea at the very early stages due to the issue of legal protection. I'm sorry again. So the main concerns were, as I have alluded to that point, is the lack of a friendly regulatory environment with the policy-making bodies being slow on formulation of friendly policies. So this lack of a better regulatory environment actually makes the ecosystem not thrive at the rate that it should. So there is a need actually to make this better. Then there was an issue on the lack of documentation of evidence and data of the ecosystem. And this is especially because we saw that the technology related startup environment is relatively new. If we look at 2010, 2011 to now, it's about 10 years. So, but there, if you are asked history of this ecosystem, it's not easy to actually find information around it. So stakeholders usually rely on information or data to make decisions, whether it is funding, whether it is support in terms of infrastructure, technical skills. They need information that can show why you actually need to be supported or why you need this kind of funding. So that there is inconsistent information. And because of that, then the ecosystem has suffered because we are not able to make accurate decisions. It's a gamble, kind of. And then there is the need of digital and technical skills. And as I have said, because of the issue of slow uptake of technology. So what, despite the challenges, what are the achievements of the ecosystem? And it was very good to see, and we can actually appreciate that despite all these challenges, it's not all gloom and doom. We have made some steps in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. And one of the key steps is that there has been seen to be digitization of the Kenyan economy, especially when you compare to the region. If you compare the East African countries, you realize that we are ahead. In as much as more or better could be done, we have made progress in terms of digitization of the economy. We have had people embracing e-commerce, especially because of the emergency that we had from end of 2019 of the COVID-19 pandemic. And due to this, I think there has been a shift from everyone, even the targeted end users. No one really, well, there are few people who still want to do business traditionally, but you realize that a huge percentage is now embracing the use of e-commerce in the sector. Then there has always been an increase in number of startups annually. And this was actually pointed to the fact that most youth are being encouraged to start their ventures to actually alleviate the issue of unemployment in the country. Then there have been expanded economic opportunities, and this is through people or sectors coming together to work together. And we have seen people in the digital space helping other sectors. We have seen tourism go online. You don't need to actually go yourself to get someone to book you, or you can get all these holidays that you want online, and you can pay for them slowly and all that. So you don't have to really harm or hurt yourself. Then we have seen the education sector merging with other sectors like the health sector, finance sector and all that. So there has been expanded economic opportunities. There have been lively conversations and debates around policy developments in the country. And a good example, which you all know, is the Kenya Startup Bill. And most recently, the bill that was not assented to by the president. So there are healthy conversations that are happening around the regulatory framework that targets or directly impacts this ecosystem. And due to this, we are going to actually see better, maybe, and or hopefully, and hoping that there will be an encouragement when these policies are formulated and they actually encourage people in the ecosystem to develop at a better rate than currently is. Then we have seen the government take ownership of MSME development. We have seen programs that have been implemented across the country, and especially due to devolution, we have actually seen representation. Whether or not they are successful is another discussion that needs to be held, but at least there is that effort by the government to actually show that they want to take ownership of development of MSMEs, which currently actually the startups fall, because we are yet to have the startups ecosystem as a standalone kind of department. Then we have efforts by the government to try and understand and collaborate further with entrepreneurship ecosystem players. So we have seen from the discussions that are currently being held, we have actually seen the government take interest, especially in the technology sector. So what are the issues that are currently facing this entrepreneurship ecosystem? There is first the issue of underfunding, and this is in the pre-seed and seed stages, which actually makes the startups not reach their potential, because for operations to be sustained, then there is need for financial support. And if there is underfunding, it means that operations have to be scaled down to actually give what they can, given the funding that they have at hand. So there is that prominent problem that is facing the ecosystem. Then there is the dependency mentality, which most stakeholders actually said that we need to start talking about being sustainable ourselves. And this dependency mentality ties with the funding, where we have to actually seek funding abroad, or it has to be someone who is not, in most cases, associated with locally, that sorry.
I'm going to start monitoring this router. nikipata ile machine yenye ina download sijui my movies na nini.
Sorry about that. Okay. So the third issue is the lack of data and information. I think I had largely interpreted that and why it is an issue, because key stakeholders need this information for decision making. And there is a slow embrace of collaboration with other ESOs. And this is that we need to take a multi-disciplinary, multi-sectoral approach to actually become competitive as an ecosystem. So the issue here is that once we do not collaborate with each other, and because of issues that come up of there is a lack of legal protection, so someone might actually run with my idea. This slow embrace is making us not reach our potential, because we learn from each other, and people actually give you ideas that you might not have seen as an individual. So there is a very slow embrace of this collaboration, but we cannot negate the fact that there is effort to encourage events that foster collaboration and participation with each other. Then there is an inadequate capacity in technical and digital skills and infrastructure. And this is because of the high cost of infrastructure to start with, especially with regard to digitization and digitalization of the entrepreneurship ventures in this ecosystem. Then because of the issue of human resource, then there is that inadequacy in technical and digital skills. Then the changing regulatory environment in the field. So the main issues that were brought up here were licensing and taxes. We had concerns, especially in the coast region and in Nakuru, because of this issue. I mean, even other regions had an issue with the licensing and taxation because of the high taxation. But for Mombasa and Nakuru, it stood out to be a very huge issue because there is multiple licensing that is required by one business venture in Mombasa. So it is not so clear at what point or what licenses do I need to be fully compliant to actually carry out these business operations of mine. And in Nakuru, the issue of Nakuru getting a charter to become a city, then you are told as a business that now you have to start giving the city rates and you are no longer a township or something of the sort. So it throws people in a dilemma on what they should do. And in most cases, we see business ventures closing down because of this high taxation and multiple licensing that is required. So where do stakeholders want to see this particular ecosystem in the next 10 years? So most stakeholders said that they would want to see an increased collaboration amongst members for better innovation and more ideas. And also to have an innovative and fund accessible ecosystem for startups. So as we had already said that this field is heavily dependent on innovation, technology, creativity, research and development. So because of this, there is need to actually learn, and continuous learning is key for this ecosystem. And to be sustainable, there is need for financial sustainability as well. So there needs to be in place an innovative and sustainable funding system that that startups can actually access for their sustainability and for the economy at large. Because once you have a sustainable economy, then at least you realize that other problems tend to be minimal as you go. Then stakeholders hope for more spaces for entrepreneurs to access support, increased funding, and networking opportunities. So in as much as there is space for entrepreneurs, especially in Nairobi region, the other regions are hoping that there will be an expansion of such spaces so that they can easily access support, such that someone doesn't necessarily have to travel all the way to come and get some of these services in Nairobi, because Nairobi is quite concentrated with these spaces when you compare to the other regions in the country. Then the other hope that stakeholders have for the ecosystem is that there would be a friendly regulatory environment. And this means that there should be policies that are enabling innovation rather than kill it or strangle it or make it collapse. So there has to be friendly policies or developmental oriented policies that can actually spur the development of this ecosystem. So what were the recommendations of the stakeholders to the other people or to themselves in the ecosystem? There should be dependable and, if possible, local funding for the entrepreneurs. This is because most funding is from abroad or from developmental partners. And as we all know, is that even with developmental partners, they always have their objective or goal. So it's usually not so encompassing in terms of the objectives of the startups. So if they want to support a particular goal for themselves, that is what they will. Then you will realize that there is an imbalance with these other areas of operation for the ecosystem. So there is need, actually, according to the stakeholders, that we need to have dependable and even better local funding, because it will be attractive and the local investors are easily approachable and they can monitor what is happening and they can actually see the reason of investments in the ecosystem. Then there is need for improved collaboration amongst ESOs and entrepreneurs. This is because there was a realization from the study that some entrepreneurs don't even know that ESOs exist, especially in other regions except for Nairobi. I mean, even Nairobi, there could be entrepreneurs who do not know ESOs exist, but in other regions, it's a bit rampant. So there needs to be strategies in place to improve collaboration amongst the support organizations and entrepreneurs. Then there is need to improve participation of ESOs with government agencies and other key stakeholders, especially on key matters that concern the ecosystem. So these are issues to do with funding, compliance, taxation, and even technical skills. Whatever matter that is of key concern, there needs to be improved participation with governments, because at the end of the day, the governments should actually create an enabling platform for these ventures. So there is need for that participation, for visibility, and also for the voice of the ecosystem to be heard within the regulatory space. Then for there is need for capacity building on technical and digital skills for ESOs. And actually one of the recommendations was that everyone in the ESO should actually have some form of technical and digital skills. And for those key personnel who also require them, they need to be capacity built continuously so that they are not becoming obsolete and their creativity and innovation becoming obsolete due to their inadequate skill, and to also keep up with innovation. And this is also to allow for ESOs to be self-reliant for basic digitization skills. So at this point, this is what the stakeholders said in the month of April and May in the 4 regions that we visited. And I now welcome feedback if there is anything that has been exaggerated or something that has been miscommunicated in the report or misrepresented. If there is any clarification that needs to be made, I welcome the feedback. Thank you. I have my team as well, so kindly look through the chat because I'm not on it. If there is any question and any clarification that someone has typed, but we can use the features there. People can raise hands and then we can get feedback. So I'll allow at least 10 minutes of feedback. Thank you.
Gladys.
Gladys, we have a few questions on the chat.
Yeah, so yeah, why don't we go through those quickly? That way everybody can contribute.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that okay? There's a question here about elaborating on dependable funding. Yellow, can I be heard? And can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, dependable funding is actually in reaction to what the situation is everywhere in terms of funding. You know, sometimes there is funding, sometimes there is no funding. Sometimes it is funding from international NGOs, or sometimes it is the government through some kind of program. So the question here, the concern here has been, how can we have a sure stream, a constant stream of funding? How can we tell that there will be funding? Say, for example, this year there is a program. There is, say, this year is a 20 million. Is this going to be available next year or the year after? So dependable funding is sources of funding that they can trust and believe that they can access when needed. So availability of money or funding, basically. Hello, Gladys, would you like to add something to that? Hello. Hello. Francisca.
Sorry, I was muted. I was saying that Fai says I have nothing to add.
Yeah, Francisca, does that work for you? Does that clarify the issue for you?
Yes, it does. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay. Now, Dennis is asking, he's saying that it would be great to have some standardization in the nomenclature entrepreneurs, startup and SMEs, so that there is a targeted effort in the proposed, can I see here, in the proposed interventions recommendations. Perhaps ASEC can support in this aspect. Dennis, and I'm repeating a concern that we have heard from ESOs, from entrepreneurs, from ASEC itself, regarding the definition of terms. the understanding of terms, because not everyone knows, for example, what ESO means. Not everyone knows, for example, what startups means, or micro, small, and medium enterprises, the definition. You know, when do you start talking about micro enterprise? When do you start talking about medium-sized enterprises? Now, these are concerns that can only be met through additional work. And last week, this was discussed during the validation meeting in Nairobi. Additional work meaning going out and trying to figure out the meaning of these words in the Kenyan context, because it is not necessarily true that what we mean by startups here is the same meaning in South Africa or even beyond. Same with micro enterprises. Micro enterprises, are there under 5 staff employees? Are there under 10 employees? Medium size enterprises, are there 10, 15? So these are all issues that have to be addressed. They're not going to be addressed, I don't think, overnight. So this is work that we are prepared to do, to engage in. Asec is committed, and most ESOs, or all ESOs who participated in this exercise, are ready to help. So I hope this answers your question. Gladys, anyone? I see Asec team around. Anyone wants to add anything to that? Hello. Hello.
I think as you have
can hear you.
Mudhoni, go ahead.
I have a comment.
Okay.
I had a question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So my name is Chris Odongo. I am the CEO of Wild International, and I had a question on terms of how I had understood the needs assessment to be, and I just find out because you've identified knowledge and skills gap as part of the needs assessment, but I wonder whether you are able to identify beyond the knowledge and skills gap. I wonder whether you're able to identify in terms of possible digitalization tools that hubs and ESOs may need. Were you able to identify that in terms of tools that can help them, one, digitize their service delivery, or digitize the management of the hubs? Were you able to identify any such needs?
I'll take that. Thank you, Chris. This is feedback from stakeholder meetings. It's not a stakeholder analysis whatsoever. We are just reporting what they said and what they hope. For the gap identification, so once I present the findings from the survey itself, we will see what gaps we realized. But to answer the question, no, this exercise did not go beyond asking what tools or infrastructure can be used. We have recommendations, but we did not go beyond identifying the skills that are needed for digitization and digitalization as a whole. Thank you. Michelle?
Yeah. Okay. I hope I'm following in the questions.
No, I was asking if you have anything to add.
No, sorry, no, you.
Oh, Chris, is that okay?
I seem to be a bit lost because I thought the whole survey was around digitization. So maybe I missed the objective of the whole exercise.
So the objective was to identify. Sorry. One of the objectives was to identify the needs or the gaps in terms of skills and infrastructure, if I got your question correctly, which is true. But you have asked if the survey went beyond to ask the ESOs themselves in terms of knowledge gaps, what exactly it is that they lack. There are a few ESOs that actually said what they would require, especially digital accounting and digital marketing and analytics. That were the main three, which we will see once I present the findings from the survey. But we did not, the questionnaire did not have a section where it asked which kind of infrastructure is required. Is that clear?
Is that okay? Chris, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, it is clear. I was speaking on mute. My apologies.
Okay, thank you. Dennis has asked, are there any policies in place or that need to be in place to support ESO's digitization and other services? Gladys, you want to pick on that or you want me to try?
Go ahead.
Okay. Actually, we did not, there are a number of policies that are in discussion right now. But we did not do what you call it, a thorough audit of policies regarding ESOs. Now, this exercise from ASEC was designed to understand the field, the challenges, and how to bring the ecosystem together so as to be able to influence and participate in policy making. Mind you, this is still a very young industry. I mean, compared to so many other industries there, it's more than 10 years and whatnot, but it is still very young. And so ASEC with ESOs and entrepreneurs need to come together to look at various policies of policies inserted in other industries that could affect this sector. Gladys, you want to, have I missed something?
No, thanks.
And this was from Dennis, eh? Dennis, are you still there? Dennis Okore, are you still there?
I am there. Sorry, I was trying to unmute.
Okay.
So thank you. I think I'm okay with that. Maybe that will be looked at a different point. But I was just trying to look at maybe what we are doing in terms of the gaps and the skills. They might have other potential policy instruments that we can latch on just to make sure that even the collaborations and even the fear or the concerns that some of the ESOs had are kind of covered within that kind of framework. But I've got your explanation. So I think it's an evolving conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think to also add is that we are all coming from different positions of expectation, and we I think I have to say that this is or rather this was sort of a baseline survey, and we couldn't have everything, just about everything in it, but this is a good start, I think, that will enable now to understand this sector, there were these issues that were raised. Can we now go into detail in terms of finding out what exactly is required of that specific part of the study? And I think with that, you can always update and come up with better guidelines, or if you're talking about policy, better policies. So just so that we are all on the same space or page, is that this was a baseline sort of survey. So we didn't go too much into the nitty-gritties of every single operation of the ESOs. Thank you. Back to you, Michelle. We have one more minute. One more minute, and then
okay. Okay. A question from Frederick. It says, what is the existing coordination and collaboration mechanism in place? What are the available funding options available for ESOs? What were some of the key policies reviewed over the startup bill? I'll start with one. Funding, coordination and collaboration mechanisms. We did not go into details in terms of analyzing the mechanism in place. What we asked the respondents in various groups, meaning the ESOs, and before that, the stakeholders who came together in the first exercise. So stakeholders, the ESOs, and the entrepreneurs. We wanted to know, as Gladys mentioned in the findings of the stakeholder meeting, we wanted to know what some of the issues were. And it was very apparent that in most cases, the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. And also, not all participants knew, say, for example, the existence of ASECs or even the mandate of ASECs, you see. So we wanted to discover first, what are the issues, what are the challenges? Now, once we have gotten all this information, I think the next step will be first to look into possible solutions. Say, for example, if in bringing people together, collaborating, and also in some, like what you just asked about the funding options. Funding options are available out there, but have they been identified for sure? Is the information being shared across board? Where do I go if I want to know the type of fundings that are available there? Perhaps we need to go to ASEC. Perhaps there's another organization around that is very conversant with these kind of issues. So this, as Gladys said, is the beginning, it is the start. So I think that ASEC would also be able to contribute in this if they are aware of funding opportunities and availability, or if this is something that has to be added, you know, to the networking group of whatnot. But this is the start. So if you ask me for funding availability right now, I won't be able to tell you go to USAID or go to Oxfam or go to the Ministry of Trade and Industry and then get there is funding available specifically. Now about the startup bills, I've said, I think answered that previously. Now, how do ESO join ASEC? I think that you can go to ASEC's website and all the information is available. I'm sorry for rushing through this because we still have a number of slides to go through. Yeah. I got Dennis Okore, thank you. On the definition, I think, do we still have anything? Thank you, very good. And what does ESO stand for? I've already answered that. It's Entrepreneur Support Organizations. Okay, so I hope I haven't missed anyone, and to the as much as possible, we've been able to answer some of your concerns. And also, let's do this. Let's invite you. We want to invite you to also contribute. You know, just don't be there as a consumer. You also tell us or help us answer some of these questions, especially if you have answers to them or information. So please don't be shy. Let us not be a top-down approach or bottom-up approach. Let's mix it up.
I had a quick question.
Hello.
Yeah,
yes.
I had a question.
Yes.
I just wanted to write on Chris's question about, I think, the main objective. Just listening to the presentation, some of the questions have been answered, but I feel like we're covering a lot of broad challenges in the ecosystem. And maybe we need to narrow it down to what the actual objective was, which was digitization. So I think for me, my hope would be based on the baseline survey that you've done, the solutions that are going to come in are to the end of the objective, which was digitization. Otherwise, we may find ourselves addressing other key matters in the ecosystem, but one not maybe a major objective for this survey. So I think I'm also struggling a little bit and also looking at the questions. I think maybe we need more clarity as we move forward and just narrow it down to how do we digitize the ecosystem to make things easier for us to be able to work easier, collaborate easier, access information, funding easier. So I'm hoping that will come clearer as we go along.
Gladys, do you want to chip in?
Not at this point.
It's a comment, I suppose. It's a comment.
I think for me that particular comment and frame of thinking is actually a very good way of thinking, because in my mind it's actually saying there's digitization of the ESO and then there's digitization of the ecosystem. So that then we are basically saying, as an ecosystem, are we digitized and is it promoting the things that matter to us? Collaboration, data collection, policy, and then on the digitization of the ESO, then it's as an ESO, am I digitizing, and as I digitize, is it increasing my ability to be able to offer products and services to my entrepreneurs, and is it also increasing my improving my efficiency of management? Over.
Gladys?
I think at this point I will not say, allow me to comment on that after the following presentation.
Yeah, and I will add that what was very obvious out there when we went through this study was that there was a confusion between the usage of the word digitization and digitalization. And once we cover the findings of the survey questionnaire that was administered to the ESOs. And also, once we go through the focus group discussion, the findings of the focus group discussion that was attended by entrepreneurs, you will see various challenges that the two groups identified in terms of digitization and digitalization. And I see that Brian has posted a link for ASEC. So please feel free to access it and do the needful or whatever you need to ask them. You can reach them. So allow me to move to the next section of this presentation. Gladys?
Okay. So this next section will cover the findings from the needs assessment survey, and the target here were the ESOs themselves. And the people that we spoke to or we collected data from are people in senior management of the ESOs. And this is because they know better the circumstances of the organization that they are running. So most of the ESOs that responded or gave feedback, in total we had 64, and most came from Nairobi, followed by Mombasa, then Nakuru and Kisumu. And this is because, of course, of the physical meetings that we held in these 4 specific regions. And you can also tell that there was representation from the coastal region as well, because they attended the meetings in Mombasa. So we have Kilifi, Kwale, Lamu that are represented here. We also had one ESO that responded from Kisii, and this also marks part of the Western region. And we have Nyeri, Siaya, and Wajir. So what do these ESOs do primarily? I have to say that this question, we got a lot of feedback that there is no primary function that most ESOs focus on. But because the survey was trying to see what actually is the primary focus, most ESOs described themselves as accelerators. And the other 18.75 said they were in consultancy for entrepreneurs, and 14.6 considered themselves a hub. Then the other representation you can tell is co-working spaces, incubators, innovation houses, makerspace, the university college, and other. And here other, we had a representation from the legal field. So most ESOs, as I said, could not actually say that I am an accelerator primarily, and then I give these other functions of being a hub or an incubator. So there is also a challenge here that these might not be representative, but because they had to pick, then we got this kind of information. But we will also hear you out and get to hear what you say about it, because that is feedback that came from the survey itself. Then registration of ESOs. From the survey feedback, 52 ESOs were founded between 2012 and 2020. That is in a span of 9 years. And most of them were registered between 2014 and 2022. 2020 saw the most registration of 11 out of the 52 that were founded between those 9 years. Then what is their legal status of the ESOs, or how do they identify when they registered? So most ESOs said that they were registered as not-for-profit organizations. So that is 17 out of the 64, while 14 said that they were limited companies by liability, and 12 said they were companies limited by shares. So those were the three main classification of the legal status of ESOs. Other forms of registrations included CBOs and foundations and trusts. And this was especially in the coastal region where we saw a number being identifying as trusts and foundations. So what stage are these ESOs at in terms of their operation? So we had 4 categories. We had the early stage, the growth, expansion, and the exit stage. So the most ESOs said that they were in the growth stage. So they have been in operation between 1 and 3 years with a sustainability plan in place, while 32.81 said they were in the expansion stage. So these are ESOs that have been in operation for more than 3 years, and they tend to have a sustainable business in terms of their finances and are trying to scale in other regions in the country. Wow, sorry for these floating things. The remaining 31.25% said they were in the early stage, so they have been in operation under 1 year, and they are trying to figure out their sustainability plan. And you can tell that there is no ESO that said they are in the exit stage, and the exit stage was where they are selling out or merging to another merging with another organization or being acquired. So only these 3 stages were picked by those 64 ESOs that were under study or who participated in the study. So this question, we wanted to know which sector that ESOs operate in. And I think we anticipate feedback here, because also due to the issue of cross-cutting several sectors, it was not easy for most ESOs to actually say they are in one particular sector. But most of them, 16%, and that was around, I don't think it's 30, but less than that, who said that they were, they were in the ICT or technology sector, and most of these said they were in the access and security management of IT. And then 14.35% considered themselves in the agriculture and agribusiness sector, while 10.5% were in the education sector. The other sectors, as you can see, were finance. We have the energy sector, leather and textile, fashion, manufacturing, health, and the other was in legal, the legal space. So what are the key services that ESOs are offering their entrepreneurs? And this is from the 64 ESOs. This feedback was from those 64 who did the survey. So 21.74% said they offered training, 17% mentorship, and 16.3% community building and networking. So those were the 3 main services that were offered by these particular ESOs to their entrepreneurs. So other key services, we can say access to finance. So this is a provision of investment opportunities. Then we had business coaching, provision of market access of the entrepreneurs' products. Then we have a co-working space, and this was someone who said consultancy services. So what is the extent of automation of these key services that have been identified by these particular ESOs. So depending on what they picked, and here they were picking more than one, but then we are presenting this in terms of what was picked the most and ranked them. So most ESOs said that their services were moderately automated, which means they were partially digitized, and only 1.56%, and this is one ESO, I think, in the health sector, that said they were, almost everything of theirs was fully digitized. ESOs who said that they had not automated their services at all were at 9.38%. This was representative of 3 ESOs. And the main challenges they indicated was 2 of them indicated limited resources, for instance, automation expertise and slow uptake of ICT and funding as the 3 main challenges. The other one indicated that their services, the services that they offer their entrepreneurs are manual in nature, and as such, they do not necessarily need to automate their services. So when we asked how these services were evaluated for them to see if they are effective or not, many ESOs said that they actually had an evaluation service system in place. And this was done through evaluation by entrepreneurs themselves. These are entrepreneurs who received these services, so they gave feedback for these in terms of evaluation of what they received. Then there was a monitoring and evaluation digital system for 36.76% of the ESOs. And 16.18% of ESOs said they had external audits, and most of them explained that this was through having other entrepreneurs or other ESOs who are not part of those who have subscribed to their services come to their organizations and get some of their services. So they were audited externally and got feedback on how effective their services were. And the others were 7.35%, and this indicated that they actually had evaluation forms through Google Services, SurveyMonkey, and such. So I think they could have actually just gone to the evaluation by entrepreneurs, but we are presenting the data as it was. So the other were 3 who indicated that they used feedback forms through SurveyMonkey and Google Forms. So do these ESOs depend on available digitalization solutions in the market? So 39.1% said they moderately depended on these open solutions that are available in the, not open, but solutions that are available in the market for digitization and digitalization of key services. And 32.81% said they largely depended on these available solutions. Then 20.31%, they depend on these solutions to a very little extent, and 3.13, which was 1 ESO, and this is the one who actually said they are involved in manual services. They said they do not depend on any available solution at all. And also one of the issues this particular ESO raised was that they are not even aware that they need these solutions. Oops, sorry. So we will go to the human resource component, and in this particular section, we wanted to know the just the competency of the teams in these particular ESOs with regard to the skills that they need for digitization of their operations of their key services. So out of the 8 characteristics that we offered, 7 actually. Most ESOs actually said that their teams were, this is their human resource, were more competent in community building and management, and incubator management and operations. And a score of 3.42 was given to digital marketing. So those 3 were the main characteristics or skills that most of these ESOs said their human resource personnel had. Then you can tell that for data analytics and programming and app development, they were the least ranked at 2.75 for the programming and app development, followed by data analytics at 3.2. So the 2.75 was a low level of competence, given the scores were between 1 and 5, 5 being the highest and 1 being the least competent. 3.2 for data analytics showed that they were average. So what skills were then needed by these particular ESOs for digitalization of their services? The ESOs said that the main skill that they would require is business development and digital marketing, tying at 24.08%. Then we also have 16.23% for web and app development and programming, tying at that particular percentage. And then we have digital accounting at 13.1%. So other these you can tell that for the 16.23% for web development and programming, these were actually picked by the ESOs who are in the tech space. So that is for the human resource component. And we also now move to the onboarding or entrepreneur recruitment for these particular ESOs, because that is their main goal, to have entrepreneurs whom they can serve, or they can have their services delivered to make them better or to make them sustainable. So the recruitment characteristics are as follows, and you can tell that most ESOs said that they actually onboard entrepreneurs who have potential to attract investment. So this is funding, and they needed to have a unique product. And then a high profit potential of the product came in third at a score of 3.375. The scores here were the same scale, 1 being the least important and 5 the most important. Then the least important characteristics for most ESOs to onboard their entrepreneurs were that these entrepreneurs should be highly educated. So not so many ESOs considered that an important characteristic for their entrepreneurs, and neither did they need them to have extensive business experience. So those 2 were the least important for ESOs to onboard their entrepreneurs. So do they have a digital platform where they vet these entrepreneurs? 53.13% said that they actually used a digital process in selection and vetting of their entrepreneurs, while 46.88% did not. However, when we asked the 46.88% why they did not have a digital process in terms of selection and vetting of their entrepreneurs, we realized that they had a partial system. So they have, most of them used Google survey forms or something like that, in as much as they indicated that they did not have any digital process. So they have that for application of entrepreneurs. However, when it came to now the shortlisting part and actually onboarding them, then everything became almost manual, because they had to have people or panelists from the organization who had to shortlist and against their qualifications, and then had to call them and all that to try and interview them and onboard them. So you can tell that these 46.88%, in as much as they said that they did not, some of them partially did have a digitized process of the entrepreneurs applying to be part of that particular ESO. So for the 53.13%, 40% used Google survey forms, and 16.67% used their own proprietary system, while 13.3% used social media platforms like LinkedIn to actually vet and onboard these entrepreneurs. So for the procurement part of the organization, the study found that most ESOs do not have a digitized procurement process, but we actually put it as part of the main operations of the business, because it is actually part of any business process, or there is an anticipation that at some point you have to procure services, infrastructure, or anything that needs to be outsourced has to be procured. So most ESOs do not have a digitized procurement process, and you can see that the only characteristics that is above 3 is that most ESOs said they have a vendor agreement system. And this was an Excel. For most people, it was spreadsheets and PDF forms that they actually had to sign off once they have agreed to for the vendor to actually get them whatever that they require for them to operate. Then, as you can tell, the rest are below 3, which indicates that procurement is largely not digitized for most ESOs. And the reason, as we asked the follow-up questions, is that most ESOs said that they have a very small need in terms of procurement, and as such, they did not see the need to focus on digitization of procurement. As you can tell here, for those who indicated that they had a procurement system, it's 18.75% who indicated they had a procurement system. But you can tell that if it was digitized, a majority said no, 81.25. And this is because of what I have already said, that they did not have any procurement needs as such to have a digitized system in place. And for the 18.75% who said they had a digital system, the average score of the effectiveness of that system was 3.75%. So it shows that most of them were generally satisfied with the system they had in place for procurement. So now we will go to the financial sustainability section of the ESOs. And most ESOs from the survey said that they did not feel that they were adequately funded. So this is 60.3%. And 39.7% said they were adequately funded. But we wanted to determine who they got their funding from. And as you can see, most ESOs are self-financed, and followed by those who are funded by development partners. These are the likes of GIZ, USAID, and other development partners. Then we had angel investors at 7.3%, crowdfunding and embassies tied at 5.11%. For the other, we had people who got investment funding from their families, from loans and all that. That is why it is at 13.14%. But if it is broken down, it is various sources that make up the 13.14%. Then we wanted to see, the duration of sustenance with the current funding that the ESOs have access to. And as you can tell from the earlier feedback that most ESOs are not adequately funded, most ESOs actually said they can only run, if they are to run with the current funding they have, they'll run less than a year. They'll run their operations sustainably for less than a year. And 27.94% indicated that the funding they have can only take them up to 2 years, while 8.82% can go up to 3 years. 7.35%, which is 2 ESOs, are the only ones, 2 out of the 64, who confirmed that they actually would go more than 5 years with the current funding that they have. So with that current funding, we wanted to know the budget allocated to digitization and digitalization of processes for these ESOs. And as you can tell, most ESOs have no provision from their budget for digitization. So this is 39.29% of the ESOs who said they do not actually have the budget provision for digitization. 32.14% said they have a provision of between 6 to 10%, while 17.86% set aside less than 5%. Then there is one ESO, and this is the ESO that is in the health sector, who said that their budget allocation for digitization and digitalization is actually above 20% for them to actually do the digitization of their key processes. So for these ESOs, do they have a financial strategy in place? And these results are a bit wanting, because you can see that 41.18% of ESOs admitted to not having a financial strategy in place. So this is something that needs to be looked into to support these particular ESOs, because from a sustainability point of view, then it means that it's not easy to have ESOs with no strategy in place to have them be sustainable. 58.82%, slightly more than half, indicated that they actually have a financial strategy in place. And do these ESOs fundraise digitally? This was asked to those who have a financial strategy in place. So out of that, only 25%, out of the 58.8%, only 25% said they used digital tools for their fundraising. And some examples of these digital tools were their websites, where they had their donation gateways. And then we had people who used GoFundMe. It was also identified. And there was Amazon's Skillful, if I'm not wrong. Those were actually identified by ESOs to be the digital tools that they used for their fundraising. And then the remaining 75% of these 58 indicated that they did not use any digital fundraising tool. And most of them indicated that they actually depended on proposals and competitions for their fundraising. So what does the organizational culture have to do with digitization of these ESOs? We asked this particular question because we wanted to know whether or not the top management have any kind of influence, because mostly it's usually the top management who have the vision or who come up with the vision and mission of their organizations. And so we wanted to see whatever culture that they have in place, does it to any extent influence digitization and digitalization of processes and services? And you can tell that actually many ESOs indicated that they have, the organizational culture has an influence on digitization. That's almost 75% of the ESOs, largely and moderately. Then 17.19% said they extremely, their culture extremely has an extreme influence rather on digitalization. Then 1.56%, which is one ESO, and this is still the manual person, who indicated that it really didn't influence their digitization. So what was the extent of, or the impact, of COVID-19 on digitization of these ESOs? So you can tell here that more than half of the ESOs who participated said that actually COVID had a huge influence towards digitization of their services and processes at 43.75%, and 17.19% were influenced to an extremely larger extent. So if you add these two, this is 61% of the ESOs, which means many ESOs were actually influenced, or the impact of COVID-19 led to their digitization. Then 23.44% were moderately influenced by the pandemic to digitalize, while 6.25% were not influenced at all due to the nature of their business being manual. So these are two ESOs who did not digitalize at all. So what impact did the pandemic have on revenue of ESOs? You can tell that most ESOs were negatively impacted when it came to revenue, having around 49.9% being impacted negatively. 29.69% lost more than 30% of their normal revenue that they had before COVID, and 20.31% lost more than 50%. 12.5% lost more than 70% of their revenue. So actually it is 61% in total of the ESOs who participated in this study who indicated a negative impact on their revenue due to COVID. On the other hand, 17.19% did not see any impact whatsoever on their revenue, while 14.06% indicated that they saw a positive impact on revenue, with them indicating or reporting a 30% increase, and 6.25%, these are two ESOs who indicated that they had, they saw more than 50% increase in their revenue due to COVID. So what services were impacted? Sorry, this is the same slide. So what services were impacted by COVID? Services that were offered by ESOs to their entrepreneurs. So you can see here that whatever services, key services that were identified by ESOs as being offered to their entrepreneurs were impacted, mostly at 29.14%. Then funding was also impacted. 21.85% said that their revenue or funding was impacted, and 19.21% indicated that their sales services were also impacted. We also see that the human resource and innovation was also impacted by COVID. And these are the main 5 activities that were impacted by COVID-19. And these activities were being offered by ESOs. So generally, we asked ESOs to give us challenges that they face to digitalize and digitize, and 29.7%, the majority, indicated that funding or budget restrictions was their main challenge to digitalization. Then 20% indicated that infrastructure was a challenge, and 17.58% said inadequate training in technical skills was a challenge to digitalization. Other challenges, as you can see, are lack of internal and external expertise, and this is still to do with the technical skills. And then there was an unclear digitalization strategy in their organizations and an immature digital culture in the country. All those were identified by ESOs as challenges to digitalization. So I will end it there and ask for feedback. I know we are running out of time, so we will please ask for your patience so that we finish this. But I'll open the forum for feedback. Thank you.
This is Chris Odongo again. I think what I'm just wondering is there scope for asking ourselves around digitizing the ecosystem? And yeah, is there scope for that, or is it too late to include ideas on digitizing the ecosystem? Because we've talked very well and clearly about ideas on digitizing ourselves as ESOs. And I think the presentation is clear and what the findings are there are clear. Is there that? And then 2, did you come up with recommendations in terms of proposed solutions? Because I can see the findings. I don't know whether we are going to be presented with recommendations that came from the study, or that will be in another forum. Over.
Yes, we will do the recommendations part. I've started with the second question. Yes, we will have the recommendations. And whether the study went to the aspect of digitizing the ecosystem, no, we did not. And I think also there is a crucial issue here. What are we referring to as the ecosystem? I think that is one thing that we kept having issues around, but the focus of this study was the digitization and digitalization of ESOs only, not the ecosystem.
Thank you for the feedback. Well noted.
Thanks, Chris.
Hi, Gladys. Thank you for the presentation. Francisca here from Velcro. I had a question. When you talked about the challenges and the activities that were impacted, I was curious to find out if you were able to gather information about new innovations and strategies that ESOs took, or those that emerged due to COVID.
No, the study actually did not cover that. But there was a discussion around whether we can actually have that information captured by maybe calling these people or not, but we are yet to consult with ASEC to find out how that can be captured. But for this particular survey that was carried out in June, it did not cover that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I want to ask a question. I think I've asked this previously. There's a question around access. As much as Paddy was looking at digitization of ESO, so I don't know if you were able to understand the FIFA is exclusion as a result of digitization would have an impact on service delivery to the managers. Because I know that already one of the insights was they use digitization in the treatment and in the service delivery. The issue to do with of this digital tools to ensure the business experience of the people they embody the program or the production. And I think another question I would ask you is this is to do with segregation. It would be nice to really understand, what's the correlation between those who have digital, who have designed digital ecosystems and the funding or the state of business. So that can actually assess where the gap is. And this is, of course, from example for what we do, because we design digital tools, but then I think the issue is, who the target and the principle that comes to the issue of access to ensure that we're not living in an environment.
I didn't quite get that. I'm not sure if any members of my team or ASEC got it.
I didn't either. I didn't get it at all.
What did you get? I asked two questions. So the first question was impact of access.
The sound is a bit muffled. That's why we can't hear you clearly.
Can you hear me now? Is it clear now?
Still challenging.
Hello? Okay. But then I tried to question with this.
Hello, Gladys, can you hear?
No,
I don't know if you can hear me.
I think people are saying on the chat they can't hear you as well. So is it possible to type your question or comment?
I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yes, much better.
Yeah, sorry. I think I had questions. The first question was around access, impact of access as a result of digitization, especially among ESO programs, to ensure that we are not leaving anyone behind as a result of this process. So I don't know if we got really insights from the ESOs, the impact of digitization to ensuring access of their programs to a wider group. And in this particular case, maybe SGPs, maybe they're willing to attract their programs. Does digitization really, ensure inclusion, and how they dealt with that? And then secondly was the issue of desegregation of this data to ensure that, for instance, it would have been nice to see, if at all, the people who'd said, well, we are digitized, is it mainly within the growth stage or the startups, etc., and also issues to do access to funding with them coming up with a digitization strategy. Where is it mostly prone, or where is it mostly evident? Is it among the different types of ESOs? And also liked another question that was asked by Mary: when we're talking about services and when you're talking about growth stage, is it in relation to the ESOs or it's in relation to the people they support?
Michelle, please.
Gladys, I'll let you handle that and I'll chip in whenever needed. Is that okay? Yeah. Hello. Hello.
Sorry, I am trying to, sorry about that. So to start with the last question, no, this was just from ESOs, not their entrepreneurs. Then the second question, did I get it right?
There was a question about that actually relates to cross-tabulation. The truth is we haven't done too many cross-tabulation to say, for example, what type of services are required by, let's say, ESO and in which sector. We haven't done those cross tabulations, but based on the what you call it, on the need or request, these are operations that we can do on the application, on the software very easily. So that cross, say for example, how many ESOs are offering, have say for example seen increase in the quality of services towards to the entrepreneurs from, say for example, when the COVID pandemic hit. We have not done those crosses, and again, with data that we have collected, the raw data is available to do all kinds of operations to figure out or answer so many questions. So yes. Gladys?
The other concern that arose, of course, by running these cross tabulations is considering also the sample or the response that we got. You run some of these tabulations and you realize that the numbers are very small when it comes to some of these questions that are being asked. But yes, as Michelle has said, it is possible. And there are some that have actually been included in the main report, given the validation forum that was done last week. And we are hoping that this doesn't end here, that ASEC will actually disseminate the full report and you can see some of these requests that have been covered so that you can see people who are saying that they are fully digitized. Where are they in terms of their business operation? How long have they been? And what business stage do they consider themselves to be at? So all that, I think there are some of those main requests that came and they are being included in the final report. And I'm also hoping that Mercy and her team will make available the raw data, the data sets to anyone who'd like to also continue with the study or pick some insights from the data. But it's up to them, but they had said they will share with interested parties. I don't know if we covered each of Francisca's concerns. Francisca.
You have, but I wasn't the one who asked the last question. I think it was a lady called Gladys, but for mine that I had raised, you have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it was Gladys.
Okay. Any other comments?
Well, I just got a message. I'm reading a message from Chris regarding the data. Gladys had mentioned that we hope that ASEC will share the data, the raw data, and Chris has mentioned, has brought up a number of issues here that are very pertinent, and is true. The protocol, most of the time when studies are conducted, there's somebody behind who has, or an organization behind, or department, whatever it is, an institution that had funded for very clear reasons. They usually have a market or a constituency that they will share the information with. But now, it is depending on them to say we will share it or we won't share it. So in this case, we can't guarantee that the raw data will be shared. In this case here, you have to get in touch with ASEC, because there are all kinds of protocols and what you call it, privacy issues and whatnot that need to be dealt with or considered. So please, about the data, we said, okay, the raw data will be available. Not so true. It will depend on the protocols that they've signed for this funding, for the research and all those things. So please get in touch with. Oops. Gladys.
We lost you for a minute, but it's
yeah. But you got the gist, yeah, of my comments.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Thank you, Chris.
We have to go through ASEC, definitely. Any other?
Okay, I think we need to move forward. We still have a number of slides to cover. Gladys, what do you think?
That's fine. Let me continue with the findings from the focus group discussion that we held, and these targeted entrepreneurs who are being supported, or who are being supported by these ESOs in the country. So we had representation from 3 of the regions that were targeted. So we had representation from Western, Coast, and Nakuru. We did not manage to get any representation from Nairobi. So we had 13 entrepreneurs who attended the discussion, and 10 were male and 3 female. So these are some of the demographics of the entrepreneurs or their ventures. So most of the entrepreneurs' enterprises were in the ICT sector. This is 5 out of the 13. And then we had 15.38% being those from agribusiness and media and communication, tying at that particular percentage. Then the rest, the 4, we have clean tech, construction, fashion, tech, and fitness. That is the 7.69% represents 1 enterprise each, and the 15 is 2. So what is the registration status of these entrepreneurs? So they are, they categorized themselves in 2. So most of them are for profit limited by shares at 61.54%, and 38.46% are for profit limited by liability. You can see the classification in terms of sectors in the graph. Then what is the business stage of these enterprises? So most of the enterprises that are being supported by these ESOs, or these enterprises who are being supported by ESOs, said that they were in the startup stage. And I saw a comment on the charts that we need to operationalize these variables. They are operationalized. In the previous slide, I just gave some of the definitions of what led to us saying that you are in the growth stage, expansion, and all that. So 2 said they were in the seed stage, while only 1 was in the growth stage. And this was an enterprise in Coast who is in media and was having plans of expanding the operations and graduating from the ESO. So what are the main services that these entrepreneurs get from their ESOs? So 29.41%, the majority said that they were getting co-working space, then 20.59 business coaching and mentorship, while 17.65 were getting networking opportunities from their ESOs. The rest of the services that they got were access to investments, business support services, market access for their products, startup support, consultancy, and banking services. So in the packages that they have, we wanted to know what what services were being offered by ESOs upon their graduation. In as much as they haven't graduated yet, we wanted to know upon graduation what kind of services will these ESOs offer. So a majority have been offered networking opportunities in their graduation package, access to funding, mentorship, and subsidized physical premises were the other services that they were being offered by ESOs upon graduation. So as the discussions went on, we identified main challenges from these entrepreneurs in terms of digitization of their enterprises. And the main challenges are 5, and they're as follows: access to funding to digitize their services and processes. Then they identified lack of expertise and technical skills, and ambiguous and many licensing requirements from the regulatory frameworks. Then there was lack of data and information sharing among entrepreneurs, and this was something that they said entrepreneurs do not want to share information because of that same issue of you will be more competitive than I am. So there is that hesitancy to collaborate. Then there is lack of awareness of ESOs. Some of them actually said they didn't know that there are some ESOs who offered services that they needed, and they had no idea how to even reach them in the first place. So what were the adaptive strategies the entrepreneurs got from ESOs, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic? So entrepreneurs were offered free co-working space and internet connectivity from their ESOs. They were also offered free training sessions virtually on digital marketing. This is most of the entrepreneurs who said this, the 13. And then they were also offered business coaching and business development trainings at a subsidized cost. So with this, they were able to actually overcome the impact that COVID-19 had on their specific ventures. So I will ask Michelle to kindly take us through the conclusions and recommendations of the study. Thank you.
Good. The slide, please. Conclusions that we came up with at the end of the study are about 5. The first one is the operation processes of ESOs. Most have digitized their operation with a substantial number yet to fully digitize. So it is not completely digitized to, they are not completely digitized to be in a position to really positively affect the entrepreneurs located under the organizations. ESO's tools and skills, that is the second conclusion. Most ESOs are willing to embrace new technologies. However, less than half use digitalized tools in their operations. Conclusion number 3 is digitalization skills and infrastructure. There is a very clear need for digitalization skills and infrastructures. Inadequate, we've been told that they have issues with inadequate skills. And so there are challenges in digitalization and digitization, not to mention the infrastructure. Conclusion number 4 had to do with adaptive strategies. During the COVID pandemic, most ESOs were able to mitigate loss of revenue and shortage of staff by automating and diversifying their services. This allowed them, some of them, to continue service delivery. Conclusion number 5 had to do with sustainable service delivery. Most ESOs have a financial strategy in place, though they lack sufficient funding for operational needs. There's a need for a friendly regulatory environment for ESOs and the entrepreneurship ecosystem in general. The ESOs and stakeholders need better collaboration and cooperation, participation as well, for a thriving ecosystem to exist. During our study, through the stakeholder meeting, the questionnaire, the survey questionnaire, the focus group discussion, it was very obvious that people were not necessarily talking to each other, they were not working together, and also they were a little bit reluctant to participate. You got people saying, yeah, call me or get in touch and whatnot. But then it became very difficult for them to participate in the study, some to even attend the physical meetings and whatnot. So a number of things are here pop out, including the what you call it, the networking and the collaboration. So hopefully this study will encourage that, and we've gotten some assurances from ASEC that these are some of the things that they will focus on. The recommendations, we have come up with, I think, 5 recommendations. No more? No, sorry. Yeah, 6 recommendations, sorry. And recommendation number 1 had to do with funding channels, diverse funding channels. We have heard that the participants in the study have concerns about a local ESO financing, local, relevant, and in tune with the realities of the ecosystem. The second recommendation on the item 1 had to do with local funding capabilities. Again, it supports the first one, which is a local focal point for ESO financing. ASEC, for example, should convene a meeting of stakeholders. So all these, I believe, are already in motion with ASEC, but it was the issue was reinforced with the people, by the people that we interrogated and interacted with. Local funding capabilities, we've talked about it. Recommendation number 2 is the need for evidence-based documentation. So this talks to data collection, analytics. It talks to research capacity, partnership with research or higher education institutions, regular and periodic research studies. Again, there is an opportunity here for ESOs and ASEC to come up with a strategy to reach out to higher learning institutions and research institutions to kind of assist and also guide in a number of themes and topics and issues arising in the ecosystem. Recommendation number 2, again, is the need for evidence-based documentation. ASEC and similar organizations should be allowed to collect evidence on issues concerning the operations and key services of ESOs. This will allow issues of inadequate skills and other gaps contributing to slow digitalization of ESO be addressed within short duration. Recommendation number 3, the need for legal protections. In various places, especially where in Mombasa, it came out very clearly that people were reluctant, entrepreneurs were reluctant to share their ideas because they didn't feel protected various legal various laws available to them, so they shy away, and this is contributes to the slow growth of the sector. Can you hear me there? Hello. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, sorry. A partnership with policymakers and government agencies. This is recommendation number 3. Need for legal protection. I mentioned the fact that there's very little trust from younger younger members and players in the field because of the theft of ideas and all kind of crazy things that I don't think we need to get into. You understand that. Partnership with policymakers and government agencies. ASEC and stakeholders should also be tasked with the mandate to engage policymakers and government agencies to voice the needs of ESOs and entrepreneurs. Recommendation number 4, capacity building. That is something that is obvious because, for example, in Kisumu, in Mombasa, in Nakuru, many of the people we interacted with, entrepreneurs, ESO, were not aware of ASEC. They were not very conversant with business development services areas say accounting, for example, marketing, digital accounting and whatnot, they were not conversant. They had no clue what we were talking about. So this means that capacity building and in technical areas has to be effected. Details on the areas Gladys has mentioned before, there are fundraising, for example, strategies, data analytics, and marketing, digital marketing that I already mentioned. So the recommendation number 5 is technical assistance. ASEC should facilitate the building and testing of a technological assistant platform that ESOs and the entrepreneurs can access and strive for sustainability and digitalization of their services. Again, here, ASEC has its work cut out for it, because we're throwing all these to ASEC. Mandate, they have their mandate, or maybe they will have to review and adjust and adapt this, but a number of issues came up, technical, for example, and capacity building, and this falls, and they're asking ASEC to do something about it. Recommendation number 6 is collaboration and participation. ESOs and entrepreneurs require collaboration and networking. Networking strategies in place so that they can help them leverage their strength and support each other. Regular collaborative and networking events and sessions would help build up the sector, meaning the ESOs and the entrepreneurs. Participation, for example, of ESOs and entrepreneurs is considerably lower than expected. We were shooting to reach about 150 ESOs for the digital survey questionnaire. It was the number of respondents was under 70, just to give you an idea. So there has to be strategies. There have to be strategies put in place to reach out. First, to conduct an audit of all ESOs and possible entrepreneurs out there, and reach out to them. And ASEC, being a member association, I think is well placed to do just that. Questions? We have come to the end of the presentation. It's been long and tedious, but Gladys?
Thank you, Michelle. I think before we go to the questions, there were some recommendations that were not put here, but they are in the main report. So allow me to just read the 2 recommendations because I'm sure that they are important, in as much as at that point we said that they don't necessarily need to appear in the presentation. So the first one is there is need for a list of accurate registry of ESOs from the Registrar of Companies. So ASEC and key stakeholders should actually come up with a way of trying to find out who exactly is an ESO and where are they operating in the country, because even as we are trying to do mapping of ESOs, it's not so clear. Then the second one is a standardization of key terms. As everyone has said, we don't know what an ecosystem really is at this particular point. We don't know what a startup means in our context. So there is need for standardization of key terms that need to be used within the, for lack of a better word, ecosystem. So I will welcome questions, and thank you very much for listening to us.
questions or comments? Or
there's a question from Gladys Kivati, the question of access that has not been. Please just go through the chats. How do we ensure inclusion and avoid digital divide, stroke exclusion brought by digitization?
I think I'll take that. Once we have the findings, I think now it is a good time to start having this discussion with the stakeholders, yourselves and other people, so that we see how best do we go about this, how do we identify these particular variables that might actually cause this divide, and how can we gap or bridge them as soon as possible. So for now, what we were to do, or our mandate was to identify those gaps, and now we can have that conversation on what exactly can be done to now.
Gladys, I think you dropped network. Hello, Gladys. Hello. Hello.
Sorry, I just got power outage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, have we answered? You are making a point. Did you? I don't know. At one point we lost you.
I think I had already finished. I had handed over to you.
Okay, there's a question here from Gladys Kivati, I believe. It says the question of access has not been answered, covered. How do we ensure inclusion and avoid digital divide, exclusion brought about by digitization?
I think that's what we have answered her, unless I got disconnected.
For instance, we have a digital, hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
hello.
Michelle, we can hear you.
Yeah, so Gladys, are you there? Gladys, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, it says, for instance, I want to rush through this, sorry about that. For instance, we have a digital software for enterprise risk assessment and sustainability, but we understand not everyone has a smartphone online, so we are incorporating USSD for people with feature phones to ensure they are not excluded. So it's more of a comment, yeah?
It was a question, but as I said, I think that's a discussion that now can be dealt with as we move, because we have now already identified these gaps. So the measures is another conversation beyond this particular exercise that needs to be had, and it's a very pertinent one, so that we also are not talking about the same gaps come next year or some years to come. And I agree, yes, we don't need to have a divide and just concentrate on people who have digitized and forget about those who haven't.
And this is, and if just to add, this is where collaboration comes into play from various players, ESOs, entrepreneurs, government, politicians, because it will take a lot of effort to move all these issues and offer adequate services and to the ecosystem, as you say. So it is an ongoing conversation. Yes. Any question? Any comments? We've overshot the runway. We're supposed to be done by 12 o'clock. It's 12:42. So thank you for hanging around and sticking with us. Any comments, any questions, concerns, or something we missed that you would like to add? Hello.
Just a quick one from me. So what should we expect next from this exercise?
Is Asec around? Is anyone from Asec wants to pick this up? Mudhoni?
Hello, yes, yes, I can hear you. So
Yeah.
the next steps are, once the report is finalized, we will release the data to different stakeholders based on the different. We'll just release the data, and then from there we will start doing capacity building to our members and players in the ecosystem, so that we can start. So we can look at the areas of the gaps that have been identified in this report. And for now, those are the steps. Thank you. Over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Mudhoni. Gladys. Gladys?
Yes.
There is a question here from Lorna on survey saturation point.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
No.
It's in the comment.
Okay.
Survey saturation point was at question mark.
Lorna, was we realized it was at between 60 to 65% of the responses, but we will embed this also as part of the annexes for those who want to see the technical part of the sampling and analysis that was done. So I think in the main report, once it is disseminated, you will find that it was between 60 to 65%. And our confidence interval was 95%.
Okay. Thank you, Gladys. Any more questions, comments before we close? So allow me to politely release you. Gladys, anything to say before we hand over to Mudhoni? Thank you very much. Yes, sorry, I cut you off there. But thank you very much for being here with us and for your contribution and comments. It's been much appreciated. Gladys?
Thank you so much. I think for those who have any feedback and they could not share it here, you can reach out to Mudhoni, you can reach myself, and we can discuss. Lorna, yes.
There's a question from Lorna. How many respondents can Can you see that, Gladys?
So
Michelle?
I had
Yes.
answered saying 65%, which was around 42 respondents. And I have told her, yes, they were adequate because they then started being repetitive, which meant that it could be replicated across the study. So yes, according to the sampling procedures and techniques, yes, it was adequate. Thank you. Mudhoni, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gladys and Michelle, and definitely our participants who have joined into this session. Well, we are grateful for just creating your time and coming to join us. If you have more feedback, please not be hesitant to reach out to us and give us more insights on about the study because it's still fresh. So we'll keep collecting more feedback from you. Thank you so much, and can see we will definitely share the presentation later in the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mudhoni.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gladys, Jen, Rashid, Simeon. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.